Oh, I'm ready.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, hello, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. It's great to be back at the fire station for a work session. This is just a work session. No actions will be taken, as far as, drafting ordinances or ordinances. So with that being said, the same applies. We have public comments first, and it's 3 minutes. And so I don't know if we have a list, but it's immaterial. Do you have a list? You got a list. And so we'll start with the list, but anyone that's not on the list, that's more than welcome to speak. If you speak, preferably on an agenda item that comes up, you're more than welcome to also speak. So a little bit more relaxed here, and I'm glad to see such a crowd this evening. So anyway, we have, is it Katie? Okay, Katie, you're first.
Okay.
And you're the only one on the list, but that, again, I said it's not the only one that needs to speak if you wish.
All right.
Go ahead.
And I'll say one when you have a minute left.
So just give us your name and what city you reside in, please.
Okay, my name's Katie Loy. I live in Coos Bay. I'm actually kind of like out on the outskirts, so I'm not exactly.
It doesn't matter, it's fine.
For one, I appreciate the city creating this opportunity for the community input. I just saw the meeting today, so I'm a little ill prepared, but I tried to get this down as much as possible. I've lived in Coos County for over 30 years, and I've lived in Coos Bay for the last 25 years. I live on Cameron Road, which is just south of the city limits, but I drive through Coos Bay daily and from Empire all the way to Bunker Hill. I see trash dumped everywhere, from the pullout on Wisconsin Street to along the Empire Boulevard and throughout Empire, especially out or near the Spotlight Bar along Ocean Boulevard and throughout Coos Bay to Bunker Hill daily. We have a problem with building blight as it is, and the constant garbage just brings in extra gloominess. The things that I see positive that give me hope. Seeing the blue house that was fixed up on the Empire Boulevard, the sidewalks on Empire Boulevard, the Empire Mural, I love it. I smile every time I go by it. The beautiful painted utility boxes. These are really bright things in the community that really bring joy. And I'm also a board member of Oregon Bay Area Beautification, OBAB. And I've seen what's basically under the tip of the iceberg as far as the garbage here. And it's really heart-wrenching. I do a lot of the photos of the before and after. And there's a lot of pictures that I do not show because it's just horrific. And it's emotionally disturbing to see the blankets, brand new clothes, food, just tossed without a care. But these beautification efforts have made a really huge impact on eliminating the garbage and trash, but it's also connected us with the city and the community because we all have a shared goal that we want our home to be beautiful. We want it to be a safe and enjoyable place. So I really urge the city to address these issues with garbage, not just for the tourists who come to enjoy the area and the beauty of it and are dismayed at the condition. It hasn't been this bad since I grew up, so it's a huge contrast.
Yeah, about 30 seconds.
So I just want to appreciate it, and we have the next cleanup next February 10th at John Toppit's at the Ackerman one. And if you'd like more information, double me.
Thank you. And so, Katie, I totally agree, and I appreciate OBAB doing what they did. I was at your event on Saturday? Yeah, Saturday. And I think it was 2,500 hours that this group has put in. They've connected many other entities, which is one of our goals, and I mentioned there, is to connect with other groups within the county, or the city and the county. Working together makes a difference. And so it's an issue we're gonna have to continue to deal with. Groups like yours make a huge impact. And so I can't say enough and thank you to the group, because without that, it even would be worse. So stepping up makes a great situation for us. Any other public comments? Come on up.
Chris Councilman, I live just outside the city limits. I think there's an agenda item for a committee that's gonna be put together. To
Yes.
address
You want to speak to that now, or you want to wait until we get to that group?
Can I do both?
No.
I can.
No,
I can't get 6 minutes?
no,
Oh, geez. Isn't that ridiculous?
thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Politics.
Politics, yeah, and you're running for one, so you understand. So anyone else for public comments this evening? All right, we're gonna move on to the agenda. First item is reviewing the upcoming, city council, presentation by wastewater rate consultant Steve Donovan. So Steve's gonna be online, I believe, virtually.
He has actually joined us here tonight.
Oh my God, I didn't recognize you. I know. See, when you come in person, thank you for showing up.
You're welcome.
So can you, for the audience and everyone, explain what you do for the city and why we use you and we're so grateful for you?
Sure. My firm does rates and financial evaluations for municipal systems, public works, water, sewer, streets, bridges, everything like that, airports. I've been working for you since 2008. As a matter of fact, April 1st, 2008, April Fool's Day was my first day. And we have been working with you regularly every year since then. And we forecast, in your case, wastewater rates. And you've gone through frankly, a generational improvement to your system with the wastewater treatment plant number 2. It's been on the line for 3 years now. We walked through that process. I also do rates for neighboring communities, Charleston Sanitary District. The rates for those folks. I'm very proud of them. Your partnership with them has been really, really remarkable.
Yeah.
And up the street here, and a couple of other communities. So I'm very familiar with this area and have been for quite some time.
So before you came on board, I don't know who wants to address it, maybe Jim. So how were we adjusting the rates or not adjusting them? Was it just a reactionary thing or what was
It's exactly what it was. And for years, like when we came here and Jim and your prior city manager, they kind of were sheepish when they wrote up the RFP. They said, we just finished the facilities plan that says we've got to replace our old teapot plant number 2. We don't know what our costs are. We don't know what it really costs us to provide service. And at that time, they had 16 pump stations, I think it was, and 2 wastewater treatment plants. Really didn't have a handle, and it was really reactionary in terms of what's it gonna cost us? We're not sure, but this is what everybody else is charging. It's kind of how you did it. And then that facilities plan came out, and here's a good one for you. The original 2007 facilities plan said it would cost $11,400,000 to replace wastewater treatment plant number 2. And your prior mayor had basically had to resuscitate them off the floor. That cost was astronomical. You actually spent $26 million on plant number 2 before it was done. So that gives you a scale of the numbers. So since that time, we've put the city on a cost of service basis. So we know exactly, I can't say exactly, but on a budgetary basis, we know what you bring in, what it costs you to provide service. Oh, and by the way, you provide services for Bunker Hill and you provide services for treatment services for Charleston Sanitary District. They provide the collection system. So you've got a system, an ecosystem here on the wastewater. And we've been following that, as I say now, for going on almost 20 years here. And it's worked pretty well for you. And I'd like to show you why it's working well for you. And maybe some good news for you tonight.
Good. Let me just reiterate. So prior when I was mayor in 2000, we had rates that we were dealing with them at city council. There's times that we would have to react and up the rates at 20 and 25%, right, multiple times, because we had to react to these costs. And talk about an impact to the citizens and the businesses is unbelievable. So to have something that we know, I hate to have rates raised, but when they're 5 and 6% and they're steady, it's not such an impact or a shock to everyone. It's not something that's necessary. 2016, when this majority, some of us came back on, we had to, our first action was to approve a $26 million budget for that plant that wasn't being done before. And without doing that, we'd have put the city in a situation with DEQ that they would not allow it to operate as a city anymore with businesses. So it's something that we have to do, and it's important that we do it. We keep our our bays clean and keep them operational and the fishing and everything else. So it's something that's important to do. So Steve, when I came on in 2016, had this, and believe me, it's so much a better system than what we've had in the past. So anyway, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, what I'd like to do is start out with a PowerPoint, and it's gonna be short. I know your agenda is heavy tonight, so this isn't gonna be the King James version. This will be fairly short, and I think I've got some fairly good news for you, because I think in 16, when we came in here, when we were talking, we had sort of your predecessors had gotten almost to the point where they were going to defy the DEQ under it's called a mutual agreement and order. And in other words, let a judge determine what your destiny would be, because that's what it would have been. And I gotta tell you, there was a lot of upset people in this community at the cost of that project. And even the technology of that project. There were some people that were thinking we could use a different technology, and what do engineers know about wastewater? Goodness gracious. You know, I've got a brother-in-law that's got this plant in Tanzania that they put lead bricks and sewage in the front end, and gold bricks and spring water comes out the back end. So that's what we should do. You know, it was almost to that level. So you bit the bullet, and let's talk about what we've got going on here. There we go. Bear with me here. We're gonna talk about the utility in brief, one slide, and we'll talk about that. Then we're gonna talk about your next challenge, and you do have one. And that's plant one, and you embarked on it. You're all familiar with it, but some of the folks in this room might not be aware that this city has 2 wastewater treatment plants, not one. We're gonna talk about the future rate profile. What are your rates looking like? And we're gonna go a little past 10 years to look at that. And then we'll talk about reserves. Where are you as a business? And then we'll talk about the obligatory neighboring communities rates. Where are you relative to your neighboring communities here? So here we talk about a quick snapshot of the wastewater utility. As of July 1 of this fiscal year, which would have been the start of this fiscal year, you have $31 million in debt, principal outstanding. By our estimation, our forecast, probably within 3 years, that's gonna be pushing $60 million. And before I pull the mayor off the floor, that's in the plan. And that's how we're gonna finance the plant one improvements. You have $16.5 million in cash on hand. Remember we talked about this regular 5%-ish per year rate increases and having good stewardship of the system? That's why you've got 16.5 million, rather than doing the fire drill of raising rates 20% and then not raising them for another 5 years and then doing 30%. Your single family rate is about $79 a month for a sewer bill. Now, in terms of the operations, you've had some interesting times here in the last several years. Plant 2 has been built, financed, and you're starting to pay the debt service on it. It's been up and running for almost the 6th year of operation now. So it's in a steady state and it's producing very good quality uplift. The next thing that is happened to the city is you used to outsource the operations and maintenance of your wastewater, stormwater, and collection and treatment systems. That contract stopped and you've taken that business on yourselves. The first year was difficult. And I'm seeing this across the nation. There was one big player, CH2M Hill, used to have one of their divisions called OMI, Operations Management Inc. And this was kind of what they did. And they did it for many, many cities across at least the West Coast here for sure. CH2M Hill was acquired by an international firm called Jacobs Engineering. And by my judgment, and I'm not gonna get into their knitting, but it seemed to lost their way. And your community is not the only one that changed from them. I've got some in California, I've got 2 here in Oregon that have done exactly what you did. They weren't getting the services that they thought they were deserved for the price that we're paying. And so now you've taken that over. This is going to be the 2nd full year of operations. And you've got that down to a steady state. Mike, your operator here, is on call. He's on business, he's on the job. And I think that the city should be proud of the work that you've done. And I think you're getting good value by doing it yourselves. Now, the next one, plant one rebuild, you are underway on this, you've seen this as it unfolding. That treatment plant is under operation now, is working as it's being improved. And that in its own right has difficulties. It's like changing the blades on a lawnmower while it's running. So somewhat tenuous. Now, in terms of capital planning, for this fiscal year, you've got budgeted $17.6 million for capital improvements to your system. Some of that is from debt proceeds that you've already been awarded, but a good portion of that is from cash on hand. That 16.5 million you got cash on hand, some of that is gonna be used to fund your capital improvements. You've got a book value of assets of approaching $100 million. So if you're a board of directors of a company here, you've got $16 million in the bank, $31 million in principal outstanding and debt, and an asset base of $100 million. You're running a pretty big company. And you've got what, 30 employees total in the city in public works? Is that walking around number? You're running a pretty good sized business here. 2 wastewater treatment plants, 22 wastewater pump stations, and 3 stormwater pump stations. And by the way, your downtown core is somewhat below sea level, so my best recommendation to you is to pick up the city, move it 5 miles east and 500 feet above grade. And I think you'd have a much better sewer system. You've got 100 miles of wastewater pipes, ranging from 8 inches to 60 inches and 50 miles of stormwater lines. So you've got a substantial machine here, and it's gonna take a lot of care and feeding, and that means money. So let's take a look at the next challenge, plant one. I'm not, for folks in the room here, plant one is located at 680 Ivy Street. It is in a very urbanized area. 2 hotels right behind you. Some residential development built in 1950 originally. Upgraded in 1975, substantial increases in 1990, and now we're doing a substantial hydraulic improvement and treatment improvement right now. The current budget for this project is $23,888,180, and that's as of this week from Jennifer. And she's when she stops doing this, she can sell cars. She's just that good at this. Funding is going to be principally through a new wastewater loan from the DEQ. You have several of those now. The DEQ Clean Water State Revolving Loan Program. You've been awarded $24 million at 2.79%, and that's a 30-year loan. In a rate model, we've budgeted $25 million, and we're gonna show you what the rate profile comes off of that, assuming a $25 million. So we've got a little bit of cushion against that $24 million. In theory, we should be done with plant one by about the end of 2026, and I think Jennifer keeps you up to date on that constantly. The things that are gonna be problematic for this project, and it's a big project, is time to completion. In this business, as in any, time is money. During construction, we have to incur what's called accrued interest. As we step on this loan, this line of credit, any principal that we step on to pay for projects, we have to pay interest on that during construction. Anybody here ever build a house? You got a construction loan, and then once you're done building the house, then it gets turned into a 30-year loan. It's kind of what we got here with the DEQ. It's the same concept.
For some context on the timeframes, quick memory aid, a treatment plant built 20 years, renovated 20 more years, replaced, right? Generally?
Generally, yeah, that's a good walking around number.
Okay, so this one was last updated 1990 and
It's
a
time.
little overdue.
It's time. It's long in the tooth.
Yeah.
And this plant, once again, when I talk about this system that you've got here, believe it or not, plant 2 is connected to plant 1. Because part of the plant 2 effluent, which is the solids, the biosolids, goes over to plant 1 for further treatment. So there is a relationship not only between other communities in Coos Bay, but the treatment plants within Coos Bay. So this is very, very interconnected. Costs are only estimates now. I know this is hard to believe, but has anybody ever heard of a construction project that's gone over budget? That's a risk and that's a fear. And we saw that in plant 2. Remember I told you, original estimate, 11.4 million. We came out of the ground at 26 and change. And the scope of the project could change. Remember, as she's pretty far into this project now, and you know, she's kicked a lot of tires. But anytime you get into construction, things could change, scope could change, costs could change. So that's the risk to this project. There we go. So here is the 10-year rate profile for you folks, and we've been kind of clipping along at about 5.5% per year for quite some time now, and it's worked very well for you since 2008, 2009. And we're talking about staying on that profile till we finish plant one. And we think that that's the complete project list that we've got in the model now would take us out to about 2030. Once you get plant two complete, plant one complete, you remember that we just talked about this 20 years you get out of you build something and then you gotta go up and then you build and you gotta go up. We're gonna probably be able to ride that plateau once we're coming out of, 2028, 2029, 2030. And then we're gonna be talking about just inflation-based adjustments, all things being equal and no other gremlins come out of the woodwork, and who knows what's gonna happen. But we haven't had this kind of a profile for quite some time because we were always facing plant two's gotta get finished and we were gonna go right into plant one. Plant one started out at about 10 million. I remember when we first started talking about it. And then we found out what really had to be done and how really decrepit plant one's infrastructure really was and what had to be done. You've been involved in that, so you know.
Now, this is a redoing plant one. If we had to rebuild it like we did plant two, the cost would be substantially more, I guess.
Well, I was telling Jim, I was in a little town called Estacada, Oregon yesterday. They've got 2,800 sewer connections. Their sewage treatment plant was built in 1960, is basically a primary treatment plant. They're gonna replace it with something that's called a biomembrane reactor plant. It's a high technology plant, and they're gonna outfall to the Clackamas River. Right now, they're hopeful to get away with $42 million. It looks like it's gonna be $50 million for 2,800 connections. So they're facing a real challenge. And I've got several other communities that are kind of in the same boat. Lebanon, up the street, they're facing the demons. So you're certainly not alone in this. What we got here is the wastewater reserve profile. Because your system is so complicated with 2 wastewater treatment plants and 25 pump stations and your frontage downtown being below sea level, you must have a reserve base here because you're gonna have upset conditions. What you see here is 2 lines. The green line is the forecasted ending fund balance in the wastewater operating fund in millions of dollars. The blue line is 90 days worth of operating expenses in that fund. The green line should at all times be above the blue line, is what I'm driving at here. And we have forecast, you have been, actually in 2007 and 2008 when we got here, you weren't. But we've got on this cost of service approach now, and with regular pattern rate increases, you've been able to keep that reserve up here. And by the way, every year they budget $1 million for emergency repairs. And you have emergency repairs regularly in your system. Keeping in mind, your original sewer collection system was built in the 1950s. So there's still a lot of work to be done, not only in the treatment side, but in the collection side. Now here is and this will be my final slide, neighboring communities rates. And, I remember, Mayor, before you guys came in 16, we got humbled by prior city councils on why on earth are you raising these rates so much? Why? We don't have to do this. And it was not pleasant, but look where your rates are relative to communities here. And look at Charleston, we did those rates. And once again, you're a partner with you folks. Remember that $26 million treatment plant? They were responsible for 8 million of it. They sucked it up. They took out financing to do it. They raised their rates from $32 to $80 in a matter of a couple of years. Real proud of those people. They are good partners for you. And at times in the past, there was friction. But I think they're really good scouts down there now. Lakeside, we do the rates there. They're $75 and they've got a completely different system than you do. They've got effectively a septic system. It's called a STEP. It's a septic tank effluent pumping. What they do is every home has a septic tank on it. The city pumps out of that septic tank into a collection system and then they bring it to their own very septic type system. So it's nowhere near what you've got, but they're still at $75 and they're facing challenges. The prison that closed, really, that was their biggest customer. And they're facing some real challenges there. But even with regular rate increases that sometimes were slightly above inflation, your rates are not competitive with neighboring communities. And I think the strategy that you passed or you plotted over these last 20 years has really borne fruit for you. And Stephanie, you've been here through this for quite some time. You were through the wars, you remember.
I'm curious though, what's the difference between us and North Bend?
Isn't that a kick? Well, North Bend, the operations manager called me, they wanted to come down and they needed some help. And he told me, we gotta show the council that we need money to fix our system. But apparently, he told me they had a ballot measure referendum where they had a charter amendment that no fee can be changed without a vote of the people. And he said, we can't change anything without a vote of the people, and anytime we do, it won't get passed. So they've got challenges, but they can't seem to get it passed because I think it was something with police and the union, something that really upset people. Was that what it was? So they had a ballot measure that changed their charter. So now their hands are tied. You can still chart your own course. And in a representative democracy, you represent the will of your electorate. That's not what's going on in North Bend, as I understand it.
So in other words, they might be headed towards a situation Coos Bay was in when we engaged.
I think that's inevitable. And then that's gonna be a question of, do you want a judge to set your rates, a federal judge to set your rates for you, or do you want you folks to set your rates?
Right.
Because under the Clean Water Act, anyone can bring a third-party lawsuit against you, the owner of the permit. And in their case, them, the owner of the permit, holder of the permit.
Well, and with the fact that they don't have two treatment plants, we're unique.
They've got one. You are, of all my clients, you are, I mean, in terms of the scale of your treatment and your collection, you're kind of like Seattle and you're kind of like East Bay Mud, Oakland, the East Bay area, and San Francisco in terms of multiple treatment plants, multiple pump stations systems. And it's your topography, it's your geography. You know, Marshfield, called Marshfield for a reason. You know, so you've got a unique geography that you got to contend with.
Thank you.
Thank you all. That's all I had.
So I just want to go back. So, when we did plant two, just to clarify, if we wouldn't have gone through that, we would have dealt with a moratorium from DEQ, which means that there would be no building permits issued. And then you said a federal judge would have put us our rates. So this is something that we needed to do. It's not something that we just could ignore.
Well, it's not only something you needed to do, it's something you agreed to do.
Right.
You had a contract and a mutual agreement in order. And one of the city councils, I want to say, they said, we don't have to agree to that because I didn't sign it.
And also, the 2.79%, Nicole, if I understand correctly, we were using some of that for Brownsfield money, right? Is that rate gonna be reduced or not?
On this one, does this have a sponsorship option attached to that?
Both do plant two and plant one.
So those rates would be lowered to,
In theory, 1%. And there's a 500,000 or 250,000 loan forgiveness for water quality.
I can't remember.
Let's say 500.
so we're able to use those funds to do like Inglewood School. When it burned down, we were able to use Brownfield's money to go in there and clean it up. And there's gonna be a low-income housing facility built there. We also put the parking lot down on Third and Central. That's another one. So we're able to use Brownsfield's money for those type of things, which helps our community. Our rate's not gonna go up. The loan payment stays the same. They lower those interests and we're able to take that money and invest it in the community.
And that, just to note that east side property it's not just becoming housing, it was a real problem for the water in the area. There's a
That whole-
flue that runs up there in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so,
So it cleaned up a lot of problems.
we worked with the county on that. This county took it back for back taxes. So we worked to deal with the county and they forgave the taxes and let the city take it over and we cleaned it up. And now we got a developer going there and doing something with it. So it's a win-win for everyone. Or at least us. Otherwise, it would have been sitting there, with a problem. And then the parking lot where Marshall Bargain House is, you know, the same thing. You know, that was a system that needed to be cleaned up. DEQ put some pressure on us. It was a scrapyard that environmentally was a problem and we've taken it on. Otherwise, it'd have been sitting there, again, not good for the community. So those are the type of things we're able to do with that money. So. Any other questions, council? Anyone in the audience have any questions? No? Steve, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. All right, so we have, a quarterly update on the coordinated homeless pilot project. Nicole.
Yes, so Chris here is, the director of the homeless response office. And we also, had a request that we, bring a conversation to you guys about the partnership on the warming center. And so we're kind of tagging these together because they feel very similar in nature. They're gonna do some shared time, in doing that. Andrew will present, and then I believe we have Sarah from the Devereaux Center and, Major Hoffman from the Salvation Army on the warming center conversation.
Welcome, Andrew.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff. The face of homelessness is changing. It can look like many things. It may look like the child that plays with your kids at recess, the cashier who checked in you out at the grocery store, even the person who sat next to you every Sunday at church. You never knew who might be experiencing homelessness at any time. The past 3 months, my team, along with a tremendous amount of community partner support, have learned so much about this marginalized population and are dedicated to being the driving force behind change in our community. One of our biggest endeavors is being at the point in time count. In partnership with the Oregon Coast Community Action, we have been able to collaborate to recruit and provide training for 58 volunteers who will be conducting the actual count this time. This will fill all counting locations, slots, and allow for a few alternates. These volunteers will be conducting the count at static locations throughout Coos County. Additionally, we have a brush count team going out to known camp locations to actually meet people where they're at, including the areas in Bunker Hill. We have received donations from incentive items through our new needs wish list. This allows us to put out open calls for donations for point in time count throughout the year. In addition to the community member support, we have seen a huge amount of support and donations from our partners at Advantage Dental, the Mill Casino, Coos Health and Wellness, 211, and the Devereaux Center. Also with the help of College Park Church Lunch Ministry and their amazing donations of 500 sandwiches that we need for our community, but we are able to provide just a little bit of comfort to those who go out and with the pit count as well. In addition to the pit count, we are currently in the beginning phases of a project management for the South Coast Gospel Mission. I have a few slideshows from the other day. I thank Councilor Farmer for being there in attendance. We also have community members that were there as well. They're experiencing flooding, which I think a lot of people in our community are, especially in Coos Bay at the time, which affects the capacity of the shelter. Last week, we were joined by Amber Darnell for Banner Bank, as well as City Council member, as I said, Drew Farmer, to tour the facility and access the necessary improvements that need to be made. So as you can see, oh, it's like that there. Oops. Let's see here. I'll just have Christine do. Yeah, so that's the locker rooms are currently for the male section of the Gospel Mission, if you've never been there before. In the next slide. you can see some of the locations that's in the back room, and they currently, have to literally vacuum the water into a vacuum cleaner that takes up a minute for each round, and they have to empty it and continue to fill it up in the process. I'm gonna go to the next one. That's their current cafeteria area that was completely flooded and currently have problems, issues with those as well. Next one. These are the shelters. So part of the projects we like to see for small projects and large projects is actually more space for tenants and for the families. The biggest thing is we would like to see more opportunities for families to have a little bit of privacy in their area and maybe have a building extension as well. Okay, next slide.
Hey,
Yeah.
just a question real quick on the family issue. Do they have estimates on how many families are needing housing that aren't able to get into?
Currently been working with Melinda Torres on that. She works with both, the Coos Bay and North Bend school districts, and, I've been trying to get a actual total number of families right now, but next time I can bring that to you.
Oh.
You're welcome. And so there you can see there's more damage in the building there as well. And, more, I think you got a couple more. And that's Joshua Haynes. He's a director. He's done a tremendous job there. I think also mentioned after taking care of it and being a director. And next slide. This is the actual hillside, and if you don't mind, Council Farmer, can you talk about what's currently going on with the hillside that we're having issues?
Yeah, so they were trying to reconstruct the retaining wall, however, they ran into permit delays due to the proposed material. So that's where you're getting a lot of the flooding in is, basically I through the structure there.
And you can see with the next photo as well, Christine, if you don't mind, there's a.
Yeah, it's flush up against the wall, and their proposal for when the drier season comes is they're gonna cut it back and make a French drain instead of what they originally intended.
Thank you, Council. And a couple of things is long-term, short-term goals. We'd like to have see more peer support, training for those that are part of the program. They have excellent rules for people that stay there. But they would like to see in the future to alternate some rules. So potentially that maybe we can get, some state funding as well, since, there's some restrictions there right now on that. Currently, my grant writer, Michael Couch, he's well known in Coos County, especially with working a lot of agencies. He's currently looking at some faith-based organizations and funding to help with the project as well. And we're also in work with the Ford Family Foundation to help out with the project. So we're currently looking at, they need some drainage improvements, at the mission. They need to upgrade their hot water system and new commercial gas dryers. They also want to, potentially get, some more transportation vans for their clients. We are working with, like I said, the grant writer to explore more grant opportunities for the project and to help out with the repairs. Another of our exciting opportunities has been to work with the Salvation Army and the Devereaux Center on their warming center project. And without further, I would also like to turn it over to Major Kaufman and Tara Johnson from the Devereaux Center and the Salvation Army to provide with more details. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, councilors, mayor, city manager, city staff. So David and I are gonna kind of tag team our way through this. So we have operated a warming center for quite a number of years, but it's pretty informal, and people are able to sit on couches or in recliners and not actually like lay down and sleep. So when David and I were talking earlier this summer, he said, hey, I've got a gymnasium and I think I can get some cots. And I'm like, really? Sounds great to me. So David worked his magic and got permission from his leadership team to utilize his gymnasium. He has a permit to have 150 people there. We have a permit for 49. At this time, we are dividing our population and we're sending those who have jobs or families and people who want to actually sleep over to the gymnasium. We have a van that runs back and forth, throughout the early evening hours. We provide meals still at both locations. We sign people in at the Devereaux Center and then transport them over to the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army Center has been open for 5 nights, with our staff, and we have been open a total of 13 nights so far this season, which starts in November and goes through April. Last year, I think we went through like April 20th, so we're really hoping that it isn't that long of a season this year. We've averaged about 10 people a night at the Salvation Army and 40-ish at the Devereaux Center. We anticipate that number continuing to grow as people get familiar with the procedure and understand that at the Salvation Army, they can actually lay down and sleep, which is not what they can do at the Devereaux Center. We have encountered some staff issues with, we've got a whole new warming center team, and we actually pay our staff at both locations, so that we have some carrot to go with the stick of how things need to be managed and how they can encourage people to behave appropriately. We've estimated the cost per night, which is a very rough estimate, because some nights it's not as cold and you don't have to run the heat as much, or we don't have as many people, but approximately for both locations, about $1,800 to $1,900 per evening throughout the course of the year. Last year, we were open a record number of nights. It was 80 nights. This year, we anticipate being open 45 based on weather.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all tonight here. Our partnership was a result of, I have experience with warming shelters in many communities. They always were leading somewhere, and I wanted to share that with you as well. There's several studies, I can't quote which ones, where they're at, or you can look them up. I Google things a lot. So several studies indicate that warming centers they accentuate the need for a shelter. So that's where I decided I would talk to Tara over at Devereaux Center, because it's been my experience. I'll quote one place I was at in Colorado Springs. We had a shelter, 220 beds. It was, it's called Barrier. It would kind of resemble South Coast. We had, they called the rules we had in place, they called those barriers. Needless to say, my challenge was to reduce the barriers, to take the barriers away. And that, after we were doing the warming centers, I was able to work with my staff and leadership, and we were able to reduce the barriers to where there were none, and we could close the warming centers and just focus on year-round shelter for people. Why do I bring that up? More studies indicate that helping people transition from their state where they're at unhoused to their forever home takes time, and it's centered around relationships. So if there's any way we could spend time with folks, getting to know them, and I'm gonna quote you one case, just a gentleman that's here. His name is Tim. Tim, I met on the 23rd of December when we opened the warming shelter. I was here. I went on vacation for the other 5 days, so I wasn't here for those, but I was here for the 23rd. I went and talked to Tim. He came to the building the next day. We're also a church, so he came on the 24th, so I got to spend even more time with him. I got to know him a little bit. He grew up here. His family was here. They moved to Alaska, and then some of them moved back, and he stayed up there. He moved back here when his family has some members of the family aren't doing well, so he came back. He didn't say he didn't have a place to stay, so he was counting on the warming shelter to stay. I kept telling him, and oh, by the way, he attended the Salvation Army there. He knew the people up there. I know them too. He starts quoting their names, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know all those guys. Anyway, he has these inroads into the community there, the Salvation Army, and the people here. He started coming around because I encouraged him. I said, Tim, why don't you just come hang out with us every day? We'll do stuff. So he volunteered all day one day, and I said, he said, is the warming shelter open tonight? I said, no, sorry, the temperature's gonna be 41, sorry. Okay, I said, well, I can't send you away empty-handed, bottom of 10. That's the last time I saw Tim. Why am I going there? Back to the, facilitating the need for a shelter. If there's a shelter, we can center efforts around guys like Tim and help them transition all the way through from homelessness into house. And that's a passion of mine, and that's Tara's passion, sorry, it's Jonathan's passion. And then, anyway, I want to leave you with those thoughts. You have a wonderful evening. Thank you for letting us share.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Anyone, council?
I do. Andrew, on the strategic plan that's included in our package, it talks about, quote, consider in the focus on short-term action, consider resources needed to dispose of trash generated by campsites. How has your group worked towards that goal?
Now I've spoken with, the chairman of the OBAB community, and we've had talks about stakeholders groups of how we can contribute more locations. Each time, for example, there was a business out towards, Charleston that was in prior need of trash, and then I was able to resource out to OBAB and get them connected to see in the future if they can actually have a current, cleanup day in that location. So I'm currently working with OBAB on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is Scott Cooper working with you as well? I know he runs cleanup crews sometimes.
At times, I'm mainly going to source with OBAB there, but with Scott's work and stuff, we're currently looking at, different housing opportunities in the future for projects. We do need to fulfill many beds since, the governor's awards $1.9 million. Current things that we can talk about in one time. I know we're short on time tonight, but is potentially here soon is we're gonna be able to sign up correctly major on the projects for the tiny home project. And Scott will be helping with that on the side too, and potentially we'd like to see something that with AY as well. You wanna talk about the tiny home project real quick?
Sure. I worked with leadership when I returned from vacation. I put them on I attended a meeting. The funds, I understand, for HB 423 need to be expended by September 15th, 2024. I shared that with them and I said, you know, we really need to get moving on this. So the tentative timeline now is approval will happen, end of February, at the end of January, beginning of February, and we should have approval to start asking for the funding to come our way so we can start the process of pulling permits, land use, all the things that we need to explore with the city.
How many tiny homes are you talking about?
8,
Okay.
10 by 40.
I'm just curious on the warming centers on both, so you have, staff there through the night in both locations. And forgive me, I know that Salvation is, Army is new to this gymnasium, so they have up to 150 beds. You said on average it's 49 at the Libero Center and 10 at, the Salvation Army Gymnasium. Is that just because the word's not getting out, or is it-
We've done a very slow, soft opening, so to speak, because we want to make sure that our staff are trained adequately to manage any of the issues that might come up. So we have chosen people that we know to be responsible and that will treat his property with care and that want to actually sleep and aren't troublemakers. So unfortunately, that leaves us with the people that are more challenging at this point. We anticipate having more people as the word spreads that actually this is a good place for families. And that people who have jobs can go there. I think that the other thing is that the temperature's been cold and it's been raining, but it hasn't been in the 20s, which is when people in their cars are frequently driven even to the warming centers when they're, when it's a little bit warm. A lot of people that have vehicles still stay in their vehicles, especially if they're couples, then that body heat in a vehicle keeps you warmer than. So I think that as the word gets out and as we cut a few more people loose to go over there and as we have more fully trained staff, that all of those things will create a more robust Salvation Army and a diminished Deborah Center.
So just a question on the warming centers. Can you explain what happens? Do Do they come into a building? You said they stay in their car. Are they on the property or?
So if they're on the property, they have to be in the building, whether it's at the Salvation Army or the Devereaux Center, that's not negotiable. I'm talking about people who maybe are utilizing the waterfront in North Bend in their approved camping area. Those are the people in vehicles. Pastor Ford has some at his church that are still in their vehicles and haven't chosen to come to the warming center. So, but anybody that comes onto our property is to be down in the warming center in our location or his location.
And are they allowed to leave or
Mhm.
they are allowed to?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah. And we have cameras that monitor the upper parking lot area and our staff deals with that if there's people up there hanging around.
All right.
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Yeah.
Andrew, in the measure of success, it looks like you're collecting and reporting on crime data, including the housing status of victims and offenders. That would be a really interesting thing for us to hear a report on in the future.
Yeah, you got it for sure.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
that's something we're working on, and I currently work with both our resource officers as well, and maybe potentially for our next quarterly meeting, I could have them speak as well.
Great, thank you.
One thing I'd also like to add, and I want to give your time, is with the new addition of the women's shelter, long-term, I'd like to see us work with the schools and one of the tours to find out currently, like you said, numbers of how many kids and families are in cars or couch surfing, so they know they have access to the women's shelter when it's available. And that's one thing I want to see as well.
And
So-
we'll provide a flyer for Melinda to provide to families that, we haven't necessarily targeted in the past.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I did. So, we'll probably have to have some questions and then you guys can help us answer them if necessary. All right. All right. Questions? Yes. Chris,
Come up there.
whichever you can speak.
One question is, as I read I think what you're talking about, the like 60-page pamphlet on the strategic plan for homelessness or whatever, is that related to the $1 million grant that came from the state?
Andrew, is that it?
It ties in with the plan, yes, so there's extra funding. to help
I don't know
us.
if it's, I didn't see it in there, but I didn't see like where that money's going. Is it funding the programs that they were just talking about, like Salvation Army?
Yeah, it's gonna be part of the funding for the project there.
Is
For
that
the
funding
tiny homes.
going to Devereaux as well? No, okay. And then the other question was, Sarah kind of touched on it, but the garbage around town, at the bum camps and things. I didn't see anything in the plan that talked about offensive littering, so already by statutes, it's a crime to have an entire camp full of garbage and just leave it there, or a shopping cart full of garbage. I mean, that's offensive littering and stealing, who stole the shopping cart. So is there anything being done to approach it from that angle? Like there are.
Well, this is a pilot program for the homeless thing. Now, if you want to talk, we're going to be talking about an ad hoc committee, which was talked about at the last meeting, which I think that would fall under. If you want to, we can discuss it at that time.
Well, sure, but there's a section in the plan that you guys put on for this agenda item that mentioned garbage, and Sarah even brought it up. So I was just, my question is there anything in that plan, and maybe you just answered it, and maybe the answer is no.
You can,
Is there anything in that plan to approach this from a law enforcement standpoint? Like they're taking garbage and dumping it in the woods. And if I did that would be a crime. If I walk into a store and take something from that store, like a shopping cart, it would be a crime. So these sorts of things are not being addressed from a criminal standpoint.
Don't believe for the purpose of this funding stream that was a authorized allocation. That'll come under the next aspect, I imagine.
Yeah, it wasn't the intent of the original plan, the strategic
So
plan,
that
so.
is not being.
Correct.
It's not an approved expense by the state.
And then I would just add, like, this group who is doing that work does not have a law enforcement arm to manage that. So that's gonna come back out to other entities to have that responsibility. This group does not have a way to enforce laws.
So they were convened with the original funding to put together a strategic plan. And then the plan is implemented through other means.
Is it possible to add the chief in on that whatever that is called, whatever we're talking about, whatever group is.
Are you talking about the ad hoc group that we're talking about?
Yes,
Because, yeah, we're.
well, no, we're talking
No,
about the
he-
homeless pilot.
No, he was
program.
talking about that.
We are involved. We have a community resource officer that is working directly with this group. And in terms of whether or not offensive littering is a crime, you're correct, it is still a crime in the state of Oregon. Whether or not we are taking action on that, we do take action. We are constantly taking action on offensive littering. We're writing citations. We just took someone to jail yesterday on that very offense. So it happens. But we have to also be able to prove we have to have probable cause before we can take somebody to custody. So just by merely coming up on a camp and seeing trash all over and 2 or 3 people around it, doesn't necessarily always suggest that we can achieve probable cause to make that release. So we have to be able to investigate that situation and be able to make sure that we have the elements of that crime and then have probable cause to place that person in custody for that, or issue that person a citation. So, but we do, we're constantly out there doing that. When somebody calls it in, we go out and we respond as much as we can. I'll be honest, our resources are limited on what we can do we have to prioritize the calls that come in. And offensive littering call does take a lower priority to some of the other calls. So that's why we've established a community resource officer position. It allows them to have a little more flexibility in their time. They're not always just responding to radio calls. They're able to take that extra few minutes to either work with the individual that they're working with or also address some of the criminal matters. So we are trying to take as much action as we can.
Just to tag it in, because I found it interesting. We also found when community resource officer was talking to some of the stores, there was like 2 or 3 giving out shopping carts, weren't there?
Yeah, initially, when we were looking into the shopping cart ordinance, the older ones, they didn't. So hopefully we rectify those problems.
Yeah, so they weren't necessarily stolen, makes it complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions about the pilot program? And then we'll move on to the ad hoc committee, which is going to address garbage and crime that we talked about at the last committee, or at last council meeting. Anyone else about the pilot program? All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, the next item on the agenda is the discussion regarding information that ad hoc committee can respond to increased garbage and crime. So at the last council meeting, Chris came before the council, not in person, but I was online, and came up about forming an ad hoc committee. So Lucinda Denova, who is council president running the meeting, she went ahead and said that they were going to form an ad hoc committee. So Nicole, where are we at with that?
So where we are kind of at this point, we've had some discussions, and I'm gonna present an idea that maybe is, hopefully a good idea, but we've mostly, everyone who was here, during the days when we had a homeless work group, and that feels very much like this pathway we're kind of gonna walk down. However, I think, though we had that, we weren't touching all the elements of things we're kind of experiencing now. And that's in regards to the garbage question that's come up. And also, some increased crime, challenge that we've had in our community. So where I think that model makes good sense to put back in place, which we stopped having those meetings when the pilot, project was brought before and, kind of it felt like it made good sense to transition that work over to the pilot. It would benefit us to kind of have a more focused group that's looking at maybe some city issues. So I would recommend, if you guys had interest in doing that, is kind of falling back to that model that we had with the homeless work group. We know a lot of the players are still here, service providers, we have some new community members who have interest in participating, and we have, some council members interested in that. So if we can identify a day of the week that works, Thursdays, Fridays, I'm not sure what might work best for everyone, and get back on that regularly scheduled meeting. A lot of great work came out of the homeless work group as far as ideas. Our community resource officer sprang from that core group speaking about how we can address some of these issues. So, I guess I would leave that to you guys. I would suggest we, maybe rebrand that, because we aren't just gonna be speaking specifically to homeless, issues. There will be some larger kind of ideas there. We've floated around internally a livability, committee or something like that to kind of address some of the concerns we have that are larger than just that homeless issue. So, I did reach out to Chris to, again, connect the idea that we'd like him to sit on that group. I left a message with another community member today, didn't hear back yet, and there's another, individual that has spoken at our meetings that would also potentially be a great addition to that group, so.
So a little, going back, in 2016, shortly after, that period of time, there was a problem going on that needed to be addressed. So we went ahead and initiated a homeless work group. That homeless work group, which, morphed into what's happening now with Andrew, is taken on its own life and moved on. But that group was able to do, things to help. Because of it, we had the time, place, and manner ordinance, which we have in place. And that helps with the homeless being able to stay in certain places, certain times. It helped with our ordinance for, our tow ordinance for cars and that were staying in certain places. That was initiated by it. Chief, what else was done behind that homeless? There's multiple things that happened that happened because of it. Is there something else?
So we implemented the property watch program, the,
Vacant house.
vacant, property
Then-
registration. There was actually just a whole host of things in a short period of time that the group was actually able to accomplish. That has given, law enforcement and work codes, some tools to work with when we're addressing these type of livability issues.
And the thing about this is, I agree with Nicole and the chief was involved in this, to reform some form of committee. What's helpful is getting the citizens involved. I mean, we sit up here and we get information, and so does the staff, but we don't see all the aspects that are going on in the community. And there's ideas out there. I mean, that's how things happen. I mean, when I'm out and about in the community, things come up and I find out about it. When I go to the OPEB thing, I know what's going on, I'm able to interact, I get some ideas and suggestions. I've been out in only one time, but I went out to John Toppitz and the city manager, myself. You know, we saw the things that you're referencing. And so it's getting involved and seeing what's happening. Without the community and them being involved and giving these suggestions, a lot of things don't happen. So we want to, I agree that we should probably do this committee again. And I would suggest, I think I have the authority to put some people in place from the council on that. I would suggest that that committee would form whatever groups and individuals they want to help with that. And so I would suggest we have Stephanie, because she was on that committee before, she's willing. I'd like to see Drew back on there again, and I would also like to see Sarah on there. She, if you all three are willing, we want to keep it underneath the forum for our council, but then open it up and figure out how we would fill those spaces for our citizens. And it wasn't just for Coos Bay. We had this be larger. It was North Bend and part of the, in Bishop County, because we are a community.
Well,
And-
Mr. Mayor, I would like to say that I think in 2016, there was no one that actually stepped up to really begin having these conversations and meet the council side that, if not us, then who? And so that's how this became a collective issue. And I think Councilor Kilmer and Councilor Farmer, you know, did an excellent job, and to the chief's point, and to the points that you've already made, a lot of great ideas came out of that. I think the people that are invited to the table to do that need to make sure that they're there for the right reasons. So my only concern is I do not want this to be members to be a platform for a campaign. It needs to be members that are really willing, wanting to do the kind of work that we do as council members and volunteer for the greater good of this community. So I just want to make sure that the members that we do put on that committee are members that are committed to doing the good work, not simply for a political campaign.
So anyway, a lot was accomplished, but there's a lot that needs to be still done, and we hear about it. I mean, there are issues and problems out there that need to be resolved and try to accommodate. We are not gonna make this a perfect citizen, believe me. We are hamstrung with a lot of things. When this first committee gets going, I think there's some ideas and suggestions I would like to come and suggest to the committee, but then let the committee act on their own and do their own thing. They did a wonderful job before. So I'm hoping those three counselors step up. The individuals that Nicole has mentioned, I think, this committee needs to decide how they want them to interact with them and be on there and wherever else. Maybe that would be my suggestion. So now, that being the case, we'll open it up for public comments. Anyone want to make a public comment on this behalf, on this issue? Yes, come on up, Chris.
Full disclosure, though, I'm running for public office. Is that okay to comment?
Yeah.
It's okay, so
We take comments from
Okay.
everybody.
Just wondering. Sorry, that threw me off. I don't have to be on the committee, if that's what you're referring to.
No, Chris, forgive me if
It's not a political thing.
I'm happy to speak my, what I believe is my truth. I want you to be part of this committee. I truly do. What I find discouraging is when you leave the meetings and misinformation goes out on Facebook, which then perpetuates more misinformation.
What was
I-
that misinformation?
The misinformation, Counselor Kilmer can speak more. She's been more direct.
I think we talked about it on the Facebook, and there was more to the meeting that was not interpreted to the folks on the neighborhood watch groups.
So it's not misinformation, that's a lack
That's
of information.
it should be considered misinformation if you don't tell all of the information, or you take a piece of information and you
So-
take it out of context.
So what wasn't spoken at that meeting was that an officer was injured, right, the day of that meeting?
I don't know anything about it.
Was an officer not injured at the Anderson apartment?
Chris, my point is, I want it to be productive. That was really my point. I think you want to, I believe you truly want to solve the problem. My point is, let's just make it productive. The people on the committee in the past in 2016 were wanting to make sure we had people from the face groups. We had, we had members of the police department. We had counselors. We had representatives from the community. I believe you're committed to this community. I just want to be very clear that when we are communicating this information out, we're communicating all of it and not some of it.
Right, so, I mean, you could have done a press release, I have an email address, I have a phone number. I gave it to her after the meeting, so if you had an issue with something I wrote on Facebook, you could have addressed it. Stephanie actually addressed it with me,
Right, I don't,
and I responded to her, and I don't know, maybe we came to an understanding, I didn't hear anything back from her, but, it's just a little
I
weird.
can't always just sit on, I have work
Oh,
and
sure.
meetings and stuff. so.
Maybe we agreed to disagree, but it's pretty weird to come to the meeting and have these people like come at me like that. Especially like, so
Well, you
unless
weren't-
my information is wrong, an officer
I
was
think we
injured.
weren't talking
I'm not
just
talking
directly to you.
specifically about
We have another counselor that was suggested to be on that committee that is also running for office.
So just to clarify,
Sure.
the meeting last week, the Anderson apartments were brought up and discussed. I went there the next day and spoke with the property owner and the contractor helping him and some of the people from that apartment building. I also personally helped two people move out of that apartment building. So I have a lot more information than was discussed at that meeting. And when I went there the next day, I was alarmed at the amount of trash. And I was also alarmed because I was informed that the prior day, a police officer was injured while responding to one of the calls. And it wasn't discussed. So like, you're gonna come at me for misinformation, but Chapinar was sitting in that meeting as well, and maybe you didn't even know at the time. But that wasn't discussed at all, that we have people in that building who are assaulting police officers. And
Well-
there's a mountain, literally a mountain of garbage.
I understand
outside.
that, Chris, and those
So
things,
it's
you
a
know,
little
we're,
weird.
we're not gonna know everything, so we can't get all the information out. When we do find out about it, we do react, our officers react, our citizens, our staff reacts.
Sure, but you're saying that on one end, and then you have the council president sitting next to you kind of saying, hey, when we discuss something in a meeting, you can't go on Facebook afterwards.
No, you
No,
can.
no, that is
You
not
can say
what I'm
that.
saying.
But here's the thing, Chris, what we need to
Come
do
on.
is, if we're gonna work together, we should work together and not try to, promote something else differently than what has happened. You also put on
But I
there,
don't have to promote the same. thing
okay,
you
Chris,
promote.
you said call the mayor. You've never called me once to have a meeting and discuss.
I don't need to call you. I know.
Well,
how
but you're
you feel, and
suggesting
you know
everyone
how I
else
feel.
does that.
I wanted them to,
Okay,
for
Chris,
sure.
let's get back to square one. You have a comment, you have 3 minutes.
Jeez, man. So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. There's a contrast. It's like night and day. Like, you guys get to sit in here and say what you want to say and paint the picture one way, but the picture is not accurate. And it's completely different when you go out there. Like Tara Johnson, sitting here talking about the Devereux Center. She stood up here and she said, the warming center, you can't sit in your car, you have to be downstairs in the basement when you're there. She just said that like 10 minutes ago. Did she not?
No.
Yes, she did.
She literally just said that.
She said they have to be in the building.
She said they have to be in the
She
building.
Yeah,
did.
she did, but she didn't, yes, go ahead.
She said they can't be in their cars.
On the property.
She can't be on the property, but go ahead.
Right, if they're on the property, they have to be in the building.
Correct.
She did.
Now we're on the
Yeah,
same
she didn't
page.
say that, but she, okay, go ahead.
But we could drive there right now. I came on my way to this meeting. I drove past it and they're everywhere.
All right.
It's above the temperature for the warming center, so
The
there's
one,
no
the
warming.
warming center isn't even.
That's the problem. There's no security there except for the 19 days of winter they're opening. None.
The Anderson apartment thing. I was at the meeting with you guys last week. You can watch the tape. The contrast between how it was discussed at the meeting, the meeting, when you guys discussed it, it was mostly Nicole speaking about the efforts that were being taken with the tenants, and the building was the focus. There wasn't really any talk about the trash outside or a police officer being assaulted, or that these people are dangerous. Matthew Wilbanks went there, I believe, that same night after the meeting, and you can watch the video he has. The guy's coming after him and he's super aggressive. I mean, this is completely contrast to how it's discussed here. The shooting last night. There was a shooting last night in the city. And there was a press release by Coos Bay Police Department, and it paints it as like there is some fight and someone shot somebody. But the reality is, and I've spoken with people involved, is there were bums attacking a homeowner.
1 minute.
He has slash marks on his face and a puncture wound. And he had to shoot somebody in self-defense. Now, that's my interpretation of it, but I mean, I've talked with the people involved. And it's very contrasting to the picture that's being put out there that we live in this certain type of city, and we don't. The property watch program that he talks about, he gets to sit up here and talk like you guys as long as he wants and talk about all these programs that are doing all this good. And I hope they're doing good. I appreciate the work you guys do, but there's sometimes we have to talk about what's not getting done. And I've personally called for a business in town about the property watch program because I help them. I'm not security, but I help watch their property. And they're on property watch. There's an RV that parks in their parking lot, starts dumping all their trash out, putting it everywhere. And a police officer shows up at like midnight. They're on property watch and the police officer doesn't do anything. So like that's contrasting to the property watch program. As a business owner, why would you be on property watch
Okay, Chris,
if they're
time's
just
up.
gonna show up and not do anything?
Time's up.
And I know you guys
Chris,
do something in
your time's
certain
up.
situations, but there's other ones where you don't do anything.
Time's up.
And you're gonna limit me to 3 minutes.
I know. Time's up.
Chief, I know when you put out a press release, there's restrictions.
Wait a minute,
Because
Drew.
of, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna decline to be on your committee because I think it's a waste of time.
Well,
I
that's
really
up
hope
to
you
you.
guys do something.
Chris, your
and I wish
time's
you
up.
luck. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Drew.
When we put out a press release, I know data is scant because it's under criminal investigation. Would you be able to talk more to that?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess I would say to you, anytime you want to come and have a conversation with me, I'd be willing to talk with you and I'd show you the real information because I feel like you're completely off base. That being said, you're absolutely right. We have to take a criminal investigation and we have to hold that information confidential, okay? Until it's ready to be released to the public. There are certain things that are still under investigation. Our press release pertaining to the shooting last night was based off of information that we were allowed to release. Now, whether people are talking about that, with, you know, to you or to, social media, that's people's freedom of speech. They can do that under the First Amendment rights. They can talk all they want. However, a law enforcement officer, we're not allowed to, we're only allowed to disclose what is information that, we are allowed to during that investigation. That case is still completely under investigation.
What are the ramifications if you don't follow those guidelines?
Well, first of all, I mean, it could
I'm sorry,
cause,
I wasn't asking you to.
No,
release any
Chris.
so the
information
mayor,
you're not allowed.
the mayor has asked.
I mean, obviously, we can't jeopardize, a criminal investigation. It could result in the entire case being dismissed. It can result in somebody maybe being, singled out and before, you know, if we disclose something and it's false information and somebody goes out there and takes the law into their own hands against somebody else because they feel like they, caused a crime and they weren't held accountable,
You're not telling me
responsible for that.
something I
Chris,
already know. I'm trying to
Chris,
tell him to talk to you guys.
Listen,
He's looking at me. I don't need to
I
know
don't
this.
care. You made your point. No matter what we say, we're not gonna make you happy. We
Sure.
have every right to make a comment and rebut of what you say.
I
If you don't
understand.
like it, that, I'm sorry. That's just
Okay.
how it's gonna work. All right? Chief, no
Yeah,
interruption.
So in terms of, we have to make sure that the information we're releasing is accurate and it's appropriate for that time to be released. We have criminal cases that are under investigation and we're not gonna disclose any more information than we can. That's why we make sure we put the press release out. Once that press release has gone out, if people wanna talk or, you know, they reach out to their source and they provide them additional information and it goes out through a social media, platform, you know, that's perfectly fine and it's perfectly legal, but not coming from law enforcement. So we're gonna be very protective of what we do, release in terms of, you know, the disclosures of whether or not my officers are injured in a particular situation. We're not gonna disclose that always. That's not necessarily information that we would disclose. I mean, there's also a protection side to that particular officer too, and whether or not we're gonna, just go out there and disclose to people, medical issues or conditions that they may or may not receive during contact with, public. So, you know, again, I'll open up, open invitation, anybody that would like to come and sit down and talk, with me about some of the issues we're facing within our community, what my officers are doing, provide statistical information. I'll show you that how many citations we are actually issuing now for various, reasons, how many, contacts we are making and how many, people we are connecting to resources and stuff. So it's all public information. I invite anybody to come schedule a time with me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to speak? All right, before we move on, I'm gonna close public comments on this item, but I just want to make you understand. There are an issue that we're gonna have to deal with on a regular basis. And you know, we can sit here and, you know, it's unfortunate that Chris feels the way he does. There's ways that we set up this committee to try to resolve some of these issues he's talking about, and they're gonna be ongoing. I would love it if things were better than they are, but they're not. So we have to kind of juggle it. I'm available to talk anytime. And my phone number's on the website. Call me. It's
I
my
don't
cell
want to
number.
hear excuses.
I'm speaking.
Why would I talk to you and hear 1,000
Chris,
different excuses that you
Look,
can't solve the
if you're
problem?
gonna continue to interrupt me, I'm gonna ask you to leave. You had your point, you had your time, we answered your questions. You might not like them, but we're giving you what we know factual. You can spin it any way you want. That's your prerogative. You can go on Facebook and do whatever you wish and make those comments. I'm making a point that if anyone else wants to call me, they can. And I talk to them. I do this on a regular basis. People call me, I meet for coffee, and we discuss things. We might not agree. We might not come to a consensus, but sometimes we get good ideas and sometimes we're able to resolve them.
Then why would you be offended if I asked people to call you?
Chris?
You were offended that I asked people to call you.
No, I'm not.
You were.
I know.
You yelled at me up there. You said
know.
you told people to call you.
Again, you misunderstood. I said,
Oh my God.
you ask people to call me, but you don't call me.
I don't want to call.
But then don't,
We need to
Chris,
hear more excuses.
you're
from
done.
Remember how they do it in Mendocino? Well, we have rules here, but we have decorum, and please, get it together.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, do I know you?
Yeah, I'm Joe. I was watching the meeting online, and I had to come down here because of
You
you.
yell at me, okay.
Get it
All right.
together.
All right. Now we're gonna move on. Okay,
Why?
Chris, one more time and I'm gonna escort you out, okay?
And what if I don't leave? Will you finally enforce criminal trespass?
Sure, you can leave. Go on, leave. You've had your opportunity to speak. If you're not gonna speak in a professional and an adult manner, I'm gonna ask you to leave, okay?
Okay.
So just go ahead and leave.
Oh, so you're not going to? Is it now trespass?
Okay, next item. Pardon? All right, next item on the agenda is discussion, regarding repeal of the city's current sidewalk maintenance policy. Jim?
Yes, thank you. Hopefully this will be quick for you. The city charter and the Coos Bay Municipal Code both lay out the responsibility for maintenance of sidewalks and charges the adjacent property owner with responsibility for maintaining condition of their sidewalk. 10 years ago, we created a sidewalk maintenance policy that put some meat to the bones of the city code. And they're fairly ambitious policy requirements. And within the last year, the city got sued for a person that tripped on the city sidewalk. And in short, the city was required to reimburse the plaintiff $12,000. And our city insurance company and the attorney they selected to represent the city in that lawsuit suggests that we repeal the policy because it's difficult with our current resources to meet the requirements of that policy. And so if council is so direct or is interested in that, considering repealing policy, I'll bring it to the city council at a regular session. How do you consider that?
But this policy isn't going to change how we react to repairing sidewalks or to replace them or to make sure that they're safe, right?
That's right.
It's just that the way the policy is written, if I understood it in your report, that this was an avenue for a potential lawsuit and our insurance company suggested we change it.
Right.
Council, questions about this? Nate, you have any commentary about it?
Well, I mean, that's the problem is you have a policy and it's a good policy. If we have the resources to follow through with it, that's the perfect situation. Unfortunately, when we don't have the resources to do it, someone who's injured, their attorney then looks to that and cites that, says, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, the only answer is basically get rid of the policy, continue to do what we can do within the resources we have. But then they can't cite the policy if someone has a problem on the sidewalk.
So are we gonna have a policy at all, or are we just not gonna have a policy?
We're
Or
not gonna have a policy. The city code
okay,
provides enough guidance.
all right.
The joining, the property owner is the one who's responsible for the sidewalk. Of course, there's plenty of places where we are joining the property owner, but, that's really the policy. Obviously, there's funds that we're trying to devote to fixing up, sidewalks, but there are limits.
Yeah, so we allocate X amount of dollars every year to fix up sidewalks, and those are in the urban renewal districts and areas. Even though they're not our responsibility, we feel it's important. Sometimes they're our responsibility. Rex knows that sometimes the wrong trees were planted and they buckle the sidewalk, creates a problem, and therefore we feel it's an obligation of ours to take care of that. So we've been doing that. But even in some times downtown and in the Empire area, we feel it's beneficial to the community and to the business district that we have those funds. And so we allocate them and we fix up sidewalks. So every year you'll see sidewalks being done in these areas. I think we allocated 75,000 a year
I think in the downtown, we've even done 150.
So we've increased it then to 150,000. So those are funds that are available to us. We do streets and we do sidewalks, and we try to keep those on an ongoing basis. So anyway. All right, anything else on that? All right, next item, presentation of a drainage issue along Highway 101 corridor in the downtown area. This came before us, Jay brought before us, and then Carmen said, well, maybe we should look at doing the whole area. If we're gonna do just, this, let's look at the whole drainage situation. So, there you go.
My background.
All right.
Christine will be powering up the presentation. See if I can focus. Okay, with our second slide. So, as the mayor said, it's been requested that we come back and talk about, drainage issues in our downtown area. And so for this discussion tonight, what we focused on is just the drainage basins you see before you in red. They go about, the northern limits there are along Front Street and Alder, and then they go all the way south to Golden and 101. And so, and then as you can see, we go from the bay to the east, all the way inland to the west, and you see those limits there. So I'd like to start off with maybe talking about some historic studies that we have on file. We have the 2004 Stormwater Master Plan, and that just covers the downtown area, which includes the 101 corridor. We also have a citywide 2006 Stormwater Master Plan that covers the remaining areas of the city. In 2012, we had an engineer look at the Egyptian theater and the flooding associated specifically with the Egyptian theater. And in 2013, council asked that we look at the downtown area, evaluate not only the Egyptian theater, but other areas adjacent to the 101. So we did that in that report. And then currently, we received a grant from Business Oregon to look at stormwater issues. And so we're looking at our tide gates in the downtown area, as well as investigating the Mills Through box that runs, and I'll show you that it's one of our major drainage basins in the downtown area. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna start to north and come south here. So the first one is what we call Drainage Basin 9, and it's outlined there, and I can't read it, but it starts there, Alder, goes down to Highland, and you see the little lake there to the north. So it's about 9 acres, 14 acres. It's residential and commercial. It's mostly built out, and the outfall ultimately goes to the bay. So the proposed solution was to increase, to upsize the outfall and replace 550 feet of pipe. It's identified as a high priority project in our master plan. Because of the bay component, the rail component, it requires significant resource and regulatory permitting. I wanted to put in there that we think ODOT might be a partner, because if it fails, there will be implications to the highway. As a side note, staff is currently setting up meetings to talk about maybe some cost sharing opportunities, not only for this project, but other projects along the 101. So $2013, because this was reevaluated then, it brought the project to just under $700,000. Before I move on, we can be interactive. Is there any questions about this one?
Any questions, anyone? Council? Anyone? Good.
I was just gonna ask if a tide gate would change anything with that specific drainage area, or we're not really sure without a study.
So there is a tide gate there, but it's in bad shape, but yes, it would help.
Okay.
And this is part of our downtown tide gate grant that I talked about.
Actually remind me of a thing that may not be at all related here, but I remember years back, the Viking district out near, Inglewood. We had some risks there, probably at a later meeting. I know how that's doing, because it's been a minute.
Okay, the next basin to the south, is what we call Drainage Basin 10A. We're getting more into the downtown area. This basin is unique. It has a pump station, one of our 3 stormwater pump stations that Steve talked about. That pump station not only serves 10A, but a lot of that area to the south, the downtown commercial district. And it turns on when we get storm surges and high flows. So The proposed solution for this drainage basin is to update that 50-year-old pump station. But we don't have the regulatory requirements because it's stormwater and we're not replacing the outfall. But $2013, a projected cost of $373,000. So I suspect it's gonna be a bit more. Moving on. Okay, so the next basin includes the Egyptian theater. Before we kind of go to the basin characteristics, I just want to show this schematic, and I'm sorry it's a little fuzzy. And so what we see here, we'll start from the left and go to the right. So the elevation at the entrance of the Egyptian theater is 10.36, 10.4. There's a little sag right there in front of the sidewalk, and I know that there were some tiles set a few years back. So maybe that elevation is different by a couple tenths of an inch, but when this survey was done, that elevation was 10.1. Then top of curb is at 10.3, and then the top of the catch basin there, right in front of the Egyptian theater, is at 9.5. So now if we go over to the dike levee, the top of that levee is 12.2 feet. Our 100-year water surface elevation is identified by FEMA as 12.8. So that doesn't even have, and the 50-year is still higher than that. So it doesn't even have 50-year flood protection. But that's why all of downtown's in the floodplain. And then you see the high tides there. Any questions about that?
Is it possible that that tiled area in front of the Egyptian has settled even further? Even though tiles have been placed on there, could it be lower than what it's showing in the diagram?
I'm gonna go look to Jay. I haven't noticed any settlement in that area.
There is a low spot
Yes,
that's back from the curb.
which that shows. So putting tile just on top of it still just elevates that low spot, but there's still a low spot. Okay, so this drainage basin, consists of about 8 acres. It's mostly commercial. Storm drain is old, it passes useful life, and the proposed solution in our master plan was to upsize the outfall. And that was the high priority. They also had a lower priority, which is to upsize, or to install a pump station, but it was not a high priority project. And the reason being is it's not gonna reduce the flooding. Excuse me, not gonna eliminate the flooding, it'll just reduce the flooding. So down at the very bottom, we did the cost, and they are $2013. So to replace the outfall and install a new pump station, $2013 is $4.1 million. Now, again, there may be some cost sharing opportunities with ODOT. We can come back to that if needed. So the next drainage basin is no slough box. This is the outfall right there at Curtis. This basin is one of the largest basins as far as the tributary area. It's over 1,000 acres. It captures flows from Balsam Creek up there, it goes underground by 10th Street, near the school, the old school, and then runs into the downtown area. In 2004, they recommended that there'd be a structural assessment of the whole entire system. But they also recommended a couple upgrades as well as a pump station. And then at that time, sorry, it's too far away, the budget was 2.9 million. I stated earlier that we had a grant to impact the system. They just came back to me just last week. Just to install the pump station, it's gonna be $17 million. That's $2024. Big chunk of that is regulatory. We have to worry about fish passage. There's also escalation there since 2013. We all know that, but it's the regulatory scene has changed a bit. So we've investigated about 90% of the system underneath that current grant. And with that grant, we actually identified a pretty big deficiency of the outfall, somewhat near where the rail is. And we're gonna have to give that some attention. So I'll be coming back to you on that shortly.
For the outfall, there's gonna need some fixing, you said, or upgrades, or?
Yeah, there's a big deficiency in the box, right between the rail and the outfall. And
On that pump station right there?
on the, actually the middle slough box. So where it goes, underneath the 101, underneath the rail and into the, bay right there at Curtis.
Oh, at Curtis, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
You got more?
just a little bit, I promise, I'm getting to the end. Okay, so I don't know if anybody's seen this, but on the 101, there's a vault there right by Golden. And it floods frequently, and that's what this basin is tributary to, and it's just too much water, to handle, too much water, not enough capacity. The only solution here is another pump station. There's currently not a pump station there today. To build a pump station, $2,004, they estimated 3.2 million. Okay. So funding is a consideration if we want to pursue these stormwater projects. Just to point out, we talked about this, the levy does not provide 50-year, does not provide flood protection for 50-year storms or greater. Levee's old, it's experiencing signs of erosion. And then if the levee is overtopped, any improvements that we do will not be able to handle the additional flow. There's some pros and cons, but we really did just discuss all of them throughout the course of this presentation. We are currently doing some projects downtown. You mentioned the sponsored erosion projects, the stormwater projects. We are going through the planning for the mill slew box upgrade. We're looking at replacing the outfall repair. We're doing the downtown Tightgate replacement project. And then a little outside the downtown corridor, just outside this presentation, down by Fred Meyer, we're upgrading the stormwater pump station. So there are things that we are doing.
Jennifer, we essentially just got a wonderful report from Steve saying that by 2028, our rates would be, we would only be increasing them by 3%. I can't help but think that we're getting this presentation as well for us to consider that that might not be the wisest of choices, because we have obviously some challenges ahead of us. Is that really the point in terms of how we're going to address the situation?
So the focus has been on wastewater. We are doing good. I mean, we're finished plant 2, we're working on plant 1. Now we can start focusing on some of these other projects. Pump station 15 that I mentioned, Fred Meyer, that's one of them. We'd like to look at that existing pump station that serves kind of our downtown core area, your central and commercial in Anderson. Just keep those up and running. The other projects that we mentioned, we will tackle them as they become higher priority. But we have to decide, do we want to do some of these projects that aren't high priority, that's not going to eliminate flooding? And I know that's a tough discussion.
So these upgrades you're talking about and fixing Curtis, is that gonna affect or fix part of our problem that we're running into with the?
With flooding?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
It's just different.
So, Jay has been, working with the Egyptian Theater and volunteering, and I appreciate it. And so one of the things that he contacted me and said that they ran a line, a TV line, and they found that a pipe was broken or there's a problem with the pipe. So, and anyway, now, we walked yesterday on the Mayor's Walk, and Jay was telling me that it's draining very well now. So, and it's not backing up. So my question is there a problem with the pipe?
There is. So where the lateral connects to the main line, it's failed. We were able to actually televise it. Mike Morgan, our water quality supervisor, and his crew went out there, found the failure. So basically, they pushed the material through. So that's why it's draining now.
They pushed it where? They just pushed it down the road?
It was blocking flow.
Okay.
So now we've notified ODOT. We notified them last week when we found out about this. We coordinated them today. They're trying to give us a schedule for repair.
So that's gonna repair the pipe?
That's what we're being told.
Okay,
I will know more.
so that will help some of the issue that's happening at the Egyptian Theater or that whole block area. Well, the flow, it'll flow better. It doesn't mean it won't back.
It'll flow when the high tide and the storm surge bounce then water will flow, yes.
Because part of the problem that you're telling us here is that with the tide gate shut, it raises and it floods. If it goes over that barrier of 12.8 or whatever it may be, it's gonna flood the downtown area. Right?
Yeah, but the tide gate outfall is lower than the whole thing.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
So does the city have a service line warranty for these?
I don't know that we're a qualified entity for that.
Right. All right, so, questions about this, anyone?
So I guess I was being a bit serious that there is a means to pay for this. I know it's project by project, but I'm not really asking about, the rates. We said by, I think it was what, 2028, it was at 3%. If the state said at 5% could be paid for these projects.
That's a Steve Donovan question, because these projects, other than maybe pump station, that existing pump station, the downtown corridor, are not on our takedown list.
So this would be another situation we have to address. And what was the total on all this? We don't even have a total.
If you'd like, I gave you 220, I gave you really old numbers, and they
Right.
were still astronomical,
Right.
they're still multi-millions of dollars.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know what how about raising the dike?
That'd be fine.
But theoretically, if we raise the dike,
Jesus, we need to pick her off the
but
floor now.
wouldn't we have to worry about how it would affect further areas further down in the city? I mean, we're just taking the water and shoving it down to another portion of the city, right?
Well, I don't think you could just raise a portion of the dike because it would just flank the dike. You'd have to raise the whole entire length of the dike. The north end of the limits. The south.
I mean, we got the dike there now, right? Are you talking about raising the existing dike, or are you talking about extending it? What I just talked about?
You need flood protection along the whole entire limits until it gets to an elevation above 12.8.
Okay. All right.
That
And
starts
you might have
at
freeboard requirements.
Sauce Brothers.
At least,
Yeah, at least.
But I mean, I've seen it flood down by Toyota in that area too, so. Anyway.
Mayor, it looks like Carmen might have something to say.
Oh, hey Carmen, yes.
Hello, I was just wondering if this would fall into qualifying for the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the grant money that would be available federally for climate change and remediation, sea level rise kind of stuff.
I know that our engineer that came back with the $17 million estimate for I'll just call it the Mill School Box pump station. They said pretty much the only way that we can build that is with federal assistance.
So that would be a possibility. Okay. The answer is possible, Carmen.
Yeah, it seems like a good fit. I mean, we're right here on the front lines of climate change and sea level rise, so we're going to need a lot of help considering we only got 12.8 feet standing between us and the entire bay. So I'd like to put this forward on our goals if we're leading into the next item here.
Well, yeah, we get our updates. Yeah, we can bring that
Add
up.
one more.
Yeah, I think you guys, are we moving there? I guess I shouldn't be.
Well, first of all, is there any other questions from the council about this or the audience? Anyone have any questions or comments? No? Yes.
I had a question about, there was the Overtop event. A couple pages back, I think it was about DB 14. Is that a single event where the water level comes over the levee that will make those conditions pretty much useless?
It doesn't provide 50-year or greater flood protection. Does that answer your question? So it's basically a stats thing. They define the 50-year storm as any storm that meets or exceeds, it's a 2% chance any storm meets or exceeds 50% level.
Okay.
The statistics then.
Okay.
I don't think it means it happens once every 50 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, next item is quarterly update on the 2023-25 council goals. Every 2 years, the council gets together and it does goals for 2 years. And so this is our 2-year goal that we have projected for these period of 2023 through 2025. And then we get updates every quarter where we're at, if they've been met, what portion they've been met, how far we are. And so anyway, Nicole?
Okay,
We've
so
accomplished them all,
I'll
right?
start out with this, because we're on the topic, let's add this to the goal. We understand the dance correctly, that if we add something, we have to pick something to come off. Just because of resources, that being staff, that being dollars, so we keep that in mind when we think about what we might want to add. And then find something comparable to take off, so.
And the way this goal setting session, I want to explain, I've always been a little hesitant on, putting the stars on the pieces of paper that are on the wall with people that have come with goals. The way that this has started, before is they got somebody to come in, they talked to the council, asked us what we wanted to do individually and achieve. Then they got with this, the staff and thought, what they might want to see. And we sat down collectively and we stated, it was ironic that most of our goals as council was pretty much in line of what we wanted to do. But then they said, okay, now staff, Jim, can you accomplish this in 2 years? And so we worked together because what good is it if we just say, let's do this and it can't be accomplished, right? And fiscally, do we have the money, right? Talk to Melissa, the finance director. Okay, we want to pave every road in the city, in 2 years. Can we do that? Well, no, financially we can't do it. So we put parameters of what we can and can't do within 2 years. And those are the guidelines we go with. So it's something that we think that can be achievable, not just pie in the sky. So a little bit, I would, and we've been pretty good about being on task. We don't get everything done, because this council unfortunately says, I'd like to add something, or we want you to do something else. So that takes them off task a little bit. And of course, emergencies happen or situations happen that, like the road out towards, South Roads out there that's left off, we have to deal with. So that's an issue that we had to deal with. We didn't plan on it. It's a $250,000 fix. We have to divert something else and go there. So anyway, Nicole.
Okay, so you might remember we didn't have some meetings in December, so we're playing a little catch up. What we're gonna talk about tonight is kind of through that last quarter. We've done some good things so far this year, but those will hit you a little bit later. So, there are 9 goals. This last session, we landed with 9 goals. The first one being working well together, which was to encourage, some DEI work, but also focusing on some beautification efforts. And I say that, I know you guys know that, but maybe folks here maybe don't. So I'll try to add some depth to some of that, and then also update. So in this area, I think our 2 big things we'd like to shout out about is we applied for and were awarded a Tribal Oregon grant, which will create some tribal historical interpretive signs down at the boardwalk. We're gonna do some refresh on the signs down there. That working well together was bringing in the 3 tribes that are represented in this community to kind of help inform what those new signs look like. We're hoping we'll get this finished up and installed by summer, I believe. And we also will kind of add a refresh to the signs that are down there. They are historical in nature. They do speak to what this community historically has had in place, which was timber industry, some water industry. So we'll clean those up, gonna move them so that the water side of the down there will be those tribal signs. We're adding some additional elements to that, which I think is what helped boost us to get us to a grant award, and that's the addition of Braille and also an audio element, so you can have those signs read to you. We are really hopeful we'll have both English and then tribal language in that audio version, so I think that'll be pretty significant and kind of add to the visitor experience.
Nicole, can I just confirm that grant was for really accessibility of the boardwalk, because we wanted, it's one of, our key features in the community. So updating the current signs that we have, making sure that it's more accessible for our visitors and our residents, and also the addition of the interpretive signs for the tribes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the accessibility portion that we're handling is getting those signs so that those who can't see will need to see the Braille, and adding that audio portion. Yeah.
And did you say did you indicate a time frame?
Yeah, can you remind me what's our?
Not exactly. We would like to complete the project much sooner than the grant demands. We have a good year and a half, I believe.
I think we're trying.
For the grant, but we're trying for the 150th birthday celebration.
That's the goal. So summertime is kind of our goal, but like all things, accessing materials, that's the challenge, but. And then I think we've had a lot of talk already tonight about, OVAB, but I don't know if we can ever talk too much about that group, so. The other thing that, in this area is, kind of working with them, they are very graciously gonna give us, some cleanups in 2024. We are regularly talking about those, coming up. I think, 8 cleanup events in 2024. The next goal that you guys have identified was working with key partners, and that's a wide range of key partners. That can be, you know, obviously North Bend, it can be the schools, the Visitor Convention Bureau, the tribes. We've not done a significant amount of work in the school in the last quarter, but, the one thing I would say, the Downtown Association, we are partners with them on a regular basis. One of the big things we've done is updated those wayfinding signs, and we now have a really good plan to keep them updated and installed with that new refreshed look. The third goal is maintaining and improving public infrastructure, and you know, this is obviously a significant area, so there's a number of things there. The first thing I would identify is that we had submitted a infrastructure funding request that would help support some of the housing projects that we have kind of sitting right there waiting to get a lift. That was a request through LOC going to the legislature, so that kind of worked with the developers who are kind of connected to those projects to identify some estimates on what that infrastructure looks like. Not heard anything, obviously short session is just about to start, so. We've made some progress towards the I&I, that infiltration and inflow. Date Street is, gonna go out to bid in, this soon in 2024 here. Third and Highland, is about 90% constructed. North 14th between Central and Commercial replacement, is also scheduled, and there's some, you know, kind of important things to talk about. Designs we're able to do in-house, and so that's one of those projects. We've got some folks who can do some design work in-house that's gonna allow us more bang for our buck as far as stretching those dollars out. Let's see, we'll move to still within that, but speaking about streets, one of the elements in the street section was to make Coos Bay more bike friendly. And so we just worked through an update to code, which allowed us to add an addition to our Parks Commission that has an individual with some experience in that area that can help inform future Parks Commission decisions related to biking in our community. Parking lots. The Third and Central, I'm not sure if anybody's walked by that, been by that recently. We've got a really nice clock installed there, but they're doing that brickwork. And they're about 80% as of November, December 31 is our report date here, so. The Front Street parking lot, we finished the soil remediation, and we're hoping for the contractor to remobilize in spring, once our weather is kind of a little bit more predictive.
Nicole, did we say that that would be finished by summer?
That's our goal, of course, you know, we're gonna be relying on weather when our start date is and to get through that, but yes, we all wanna put this project up on the shelf and move fast, so. And then the Franco gas station, that property out in Empire, we're gonna create a parking lot out there. We expect to be putting that bid request out on the streets starting in February, early March. And then it seems so long ago, but the Tesla charging station is up and running. I remember we're talking last quarter, so.
Have you used it, Jay?
I plugged in one day
Okay.
briefly, but my rate is cheaper at home.
Okay. Okay.
That's fair. And then we had an interest to look at options to kind of rework some of our downtown parking lots with some resurfacing and striping. And so we did 6 parking lots with, refill, restripe. We plan to have another 6 in this coming summer. Sidewalks, I think we talked about sidewalks a little bit earlier, but we've completed 2 projects so far, and we'll be putting some more projects in the next fiscal year's budget. Then we get into parks, and we've done a lot of work in the parks as far as identifying some funding sources and actually putting in for some grants. We've been awarded with Judith and Logan, a $40,000 for the small kids relocation project at Mingus. And then also the Cookville Tribal Community Fund helped do grant towards stabilizing the foundation of the Scout Cabin. And we're looking at a whole list of some other options out there to continue some work at Mingus Park, specifically for bathrooms and Scout Cabin work. That's kind of been the focus for the Parks Commission. And the boardwalk, we do have efforts underway to create that 5-year CIP fund, so we can start doing some work down there to improve that. And then again, 2 places we're hitting that travel Oregon grant award, also getting here and meeting that goal. Then we will move into goal number 4, which is addressing housing and homelessness. And we are currently working with the county and DLCD for urban growth boundary. Hopefully some expansion there. We already know we have that agreement that's decades old that has identified those areas that we can expand in, already agreed upon. We're just hoping to circle back with that and actually use that agreement. We are looking at, or working on right now, a rewrite to our development code, which could have barriers to housing development. So we're looking at that as a ways to reduce those barriers. And then also, there's been some discussion, some encouragement to maybe look at just in general, some efficiency opportunities in those processes, people coming to the counter and working with things. So we are looking at ways we can do an efficiency evaluation. We talked earlier about the expansion to the warming center. That's happened. The shopping cart ordinance was updated and put into place. We're actually doing that work now as far as enforcement.
So how's that going anyway?
Probably mixed reviews, I would suggest. I think that the program that we brought forward as an option, they are not staffed to really adequately handle the big ask that has been done by communities. So that's a tough one. I don't think they're gonna be able to rely.
I mean, so the police department's not adequately staffed to make.
No,
The company.
No, so
Oh,
The company.
the company.
so that's, they could
That's
do
at
this.
at the phone number. Now, can I follow up with a question on that? Did the owners of the shopping carts do the identification? And so we asked them to do something and we may not have anybody that they can call to come and pick it up.
Yeah, so that's true, but we also have, we have started the list of the folks who are willing to, when we find a cart, before they didn't want to be victims and allow us to make any progress on that. But now we've got a number of them who are interested in working with us from that angle. So if we do get someone who has a cart and they are part of that program, that we can take those next steps. I'm not sure, I don't know if you want to speak to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on. Basically what we've done is obviously the ordinance is enacted now and, we have reached out to all the businesses. Actually, Captain Lindahl's done a fantastic job with the program. He's reached out to all the businesses. I informed them of the new ordinances and the requirements as a business, owner. They have been required to place the tags with a 1-800 number or a number that, they can be reached to come and retrieve their cards if they're found in the, city. In addition, we've expanded our property watch program to include now a cart watch program. And what that does is it allows the businesses to then sign up for the program. And if we see one of their carts, out and about, and usually it has to be if somebody's pushing it, because if it's just abandoned, we wouldn't be able to really take action. But if somebody is pushing their cart, we know that they're a member of the cart watch program. Therefore, they have not authorized anybody to have their cards, because we ran into that. You were absolutely right, Mr. Farmer. And so we've now eliminated us maybe potentially running into somebody that was given a cart by the business owners, and then that will allow us to take action. Now, whether that action is contact the stores and just let them know that their cart is being possessed by somebody and they need to come and retrieve it, or if we take criminal action, issuing a citation for theft. But it does allow us to have that. And so that's another component to the property watch now extension. It's the cart watch.
So
and
if
then-
you, question on that, if you make contact and they say they aren't supposed to have it, what action do you do with the cart?
So that would be, basically, we would treat that as any type of a criminal investigation. So we would be out with someone, depending on the value of that cart. What we also learned is all these carts have different value based off of the size store. So some stores pay a little bit more than other stores because they're buying in larger volumes. And so we would look at what degree of theft we are dealing with. And in most cases, it'll probably be a theft 3. But then that is actually evidence or property of that theft. And so what we would do as police officers, we'd return that cart at that point we'd take photographs of it for our criminal investigation, and then we would return that back to the store owner. If it's found abandoned on the city streets, then that is where really the onus is kind of put back on the store owner. They would need to either make arrangements through this third-party source that could come and retrieve the carts, or they could designate someone within their organization to come in and collect the carts. If Public Works is seeing it, what we're generally doing is they are retrieving that cart. They're storing it at the city shops. They're calling the number, and then the store is given 72 hours to come and retrieve it. That's
Are
kind of
they,
where we're at.
are they doing that?
I don't know, Jim, if you know much about what's happening on the Public Works side, if the store owners are actually coming and retrieving their carts. I haven't really been out to the shops to look at the inventory.
Yeah, we can report back on that. I believe they are.
Okay.
But the number that we've been retrieving is definitely on the upswing.
Okay.
And the number of the number of carts that you are finding, if somebody has possession of that, is that number rising as well?
Well, honestly, just kind of without actually pulling some, honest numbers here, I'm gonna say just based off of what I'm seeing and reading in the logs, I'm not seeing as many carts found actively being pushed down the road by somebody. It's more of the abandoned carts that we're seeing. And I don't know if they're just using the cart from point A to point B and then getting rid of the cart so they don't get caught with the cart. I don't know, but I think we're seeing more cases of an abandoned cart than we are somebody actively in possession of stolen property.
So if I'm a citizen and I see, just the other day, driving through Empire, saw 2 carts with people in possession of them, should I call the non-emergent line?
Yeah, if you see people pushing a shopping cart, I would encourage you to call them on.
And that number is?
541-269-8911.
Thank you.
It's radio skills.
Yeah.
So the way this came about, here's a perfect example where the citizen came and made a comment about shopping carts going down the road and transporting garbage and other things and leaving it and creating an issue. So we, as council, as staff get involved, we found out that we were picking up carts and putting putting on the city shop. I'm gonna say hundreds, I don't know how many a month, but it was quite a few. Then the stores didn't want them back because of the shape they were in. And of course, then we were having to dispose of them. So it became a cost to us in many ways. The shops, police officers picking them up. I remember Roger had his pickup, he'd be out there picking up carts because they were around. So we instituted this shopping ordinance cart situation. I wanted one thing and I lost, I didn't get my way, that happens occasionally, but that's all right. So we initiated another ordinance that got a company that came in and is overseeing this program and helping us. And it has diminished in help. So that's an example that, you know, I feel bad that Chris comes in here and says things aren't being done and they're prayed differently. Things aren't perfect and that's why we're asking for help. But this is what something happened and got initiated. And I think it's resolved it and it's helped the situation. Is it made perfect? No. Stephanie just said she saw 2 carts out in Empire. You know, so that's what's happening, but it's much better than it was, and we'll continue to work on it until it gets better. And hopefully the company will get manned up and be able to help us more. This company's supposed to be able to pick up the carts and deliver back to the shopping centers or the stores, and there's a fee that they pay, and they have to go through a process. So anyway, that's how that happened.
So interestingly enough, the banter, and I do follow a lot of social media because I feel like people have no qualms about saying how they feel on social media. And for me, it's a good barometer as an elected official to see what people, you know, what maybe I'm missing. And interestingly enough, there was a lengthy conversation or a thread on the shopping carts and abandoned shopping carts and people pushing shopping carts. And quite a bit of support, which surprised me, honestly, about your proposal to actually initiate an electronic thing that stops the carts from leaving the parking lot. And it, you know, it surprises me because we discussed this about, at length in public meetings, why we wanted to approach this with a lighter hammer, then put the onus all on the businesses which are experiencing higher and higher costs. But that topic did come up from groups that are frustrated, folks that are frustrated, that there is this option out there and we are aware of it. And it may be that we end up having to go back to something like that, but I thought that you needed to know that there was support for that in the community. And
But I think this is the right, I mean, but truthfully, this is a step in the right direction, and whether we get there or not, then the other frustration, this is the other thing that happens. These are unknowns that we don't know about. Then we find out, because we have Captain Linville that goes out and does some investigating, then we find out stores were giving away their old carts to these individuals. So it's a deterrent of what we're trying to do. So we had to approach them and say, look, we'd rather you not do that, let's find another option. So these are the things that we deal with. You know, it's interesting, it's like pulling on the yarn, things unravel and you find out things that you really don't want to know about. But anyway, there you go. Sorry, Nicole. Go
Okay.
ahead.
We'll try and go a little faster. So, number 5, economic development. In that, speaks to the Empire Blueprint, so that work is still going, the upcoming meeting in February and March, hoping adoption in May.
Nicole, these are all on the website too.
Yes, this whole document is out on the website. We put the new one up after we share it with you guys. And then we step into number 6, which is public safety. There's not a lot of work happening in there, but goal specific, we didn't necessarily updates there. Number 7, communication between the city and citizens. Again, that's kind of another area, like not a lot of work happening there, specific to the goals. Number 8 was the city manager transition plan, needed. Number 9, council goal tracking, that's just like kind of ongoing. We have a document, we're watching that, reporting back to you, putting it on the website. So there we have it.
All right. Any questions by anyone? And this, like I said, we'll go through 2025 and then, the council will hopefully do this again. I mean, I think it's a value and it keeps us on track and we listen to citizens and change it accordingly. So I want to know one other thing. First of all, we'll take public comments afterwards. I think it's important. I had an opportunity to meet with the chief the other day. And my frustration about how we need to improve things through homelessness, garbage and whatever else. You know, how can we have the balance? We have a need to take care of these individuals, but we also have a need to take care of our citizens in our city and make sure it's a livable city. So we have a resource officer, and sometimes I think that individuals and even the council at times, what have we done and what have we accomplished? So Chief, do you have Resource Officer Coleman's, what he did last year in 2023 and what we've done as far as touches and pickups and all that stuff?
So next month at your first council meeting, I'm actually gonna be providing you guys with a just kind of a look back on 2023, providing you more in-depth statistical reports on what all took place. So when you and I met yesterday, we were just talking, I did a 4-month look back just on our community resource officer and his activities, just to kind of get a general understanding of how busy he is and how busy. And this only speaks to him. My other officers are all trained the same way. They're handling these types of contacts as well, but this is just specific to his job. And
so the resource officer's main job is to.
Yes,
Do what?
his main job is to go out and have contact with the unhoused population within our community, those that are suffering from mental health issues. He is connected with all the available resources within our community, and he has the opportunity to spend a little extra time with that particular person, connecting them to those resources, whether it's shelter, whether it's mental health, whether it's just medical needs. We've had where they just needed a battery put back in their car to move them from one spot to the next spot. They became stranded because they had mechanical issues. So he's able to just really work with those individuals and seek the help that they need. And so with that, there's also the criminal side or the enforcement side that he deals with as well. So, and it's that balance. There's times where you reach a point where enforcement needs to take place, or a citation needs to be issued, or a vehicle needs to be removed from the city streets. And so just a 4-month look back, he had over 450 contacts. He had 155 case numbers. So that means those are the situations where he had to do some form of criminal investigation or impounded either property or a vehicle was removed from the city streets. Camping violations, he addressed 264 camping violations, and this is just in 4 months. Unlawful vehicles, tagged 84 unlawful vehicles. 14 of those vehicles actually resulted in us having to remove those unlawful. And if you remember, this is one of the things that the homeless work group put together, was we changed our towing of illegal vehicle ordinance to also include an unlawful component. And so unlawful means that the vehicle is not registered, it doesn't have insurance, or it's inoperable. There's other conditions that cause it to become unlawful to actually operate on the city streets. And so that's another little category within that ordinance. And so 14 of those vehicles were actually removed. He reached out and actually connected homeless with outreach programs, 322 of them. Community collaboration hours. So he collaborated with all these other groups over 60 hours, connected 53 people to actual services within our community, assisted our mobile response team, which is a members of the Coos Health and Wellness. They have mobile clinicians that come out and address mental health needs on the site with us on scene. And he assisted them 9 times and actually connected, and this I think is something that everybody will like to hear, he actually connected 13 people to homes. And so 13 people, he was able to move them into some type of a transitional home. So a tremendous amount of work is being done. And again, this is just one officer, one community resource officer. Now my other officers are out there doing the absolute best they can as well, but they are also required to respond
to radio calls. And so they may get a few minutes, and then next thing you know, they have to run all the way out to the next area to handle a priority call or an in-progress type of call. So
Thank you.
I think it's a wonderful program.
So it's just a snapshot of what goes on. I mean, it's, there's more than this happened. And so I hope that this livability work group, there's an interest, please step forward. You know, that was successful last time. I look forward to being successful also and addressing some things that we can improve on and adopt and move like we have in the past. So anyway, and I definitely hope that Stephanie, Drew, and Sarah agree to step into those positions. You can, your silence is, you know, we keep pushing and twisting you, but it's important. And so if you're willing to do it, I'd love to have you do that.
I had one more question. So just for clarification, the report that you'll be giving at the council meeting, will that be just on homelessness and the community resource or statistics?
What I'm hoping to share with you is the entire, kind of look of our police department to include our dispatch center, our records unit, just kind of a look back at what we do, and then look back in 23 and maybe compare some of those stats with even 22, and just to kind of give everybody a sense of where we're at right now.
Perfect, because then I will delete the email that I had started before I got here.
So is there any other comments or, I mean, just anything in general that anyone wants to talk about? You know, that's what this work session is about. And even having this venue, it's more interactive, and that's what this is about. So anyone?
I just want to thank OBAB for all of their efforts. Truly, it doesn't go unnoticed. It seems like every time you have one of these fundraisers in Empire, I'm not available, but I'm so appreciative of the work that you do. And, yes, is there work to still do? I think we all acknowledge that, but again, I think we've got the flyer, right? Just really want to say thank you to you for all of those efforts and your care of this community.
And everyone.
She stole the words right out of my mouth. I was just gonna say, it's nice to actually see you in person. I do, like, I follow a lot of social media, and it's not just what you do with OBAB, Katie, it's also that you actually are out there trying to get people healthy by walking through our parks, and also, you know, that you notice, because you are using those places that you're cleaning up and you're out there, and I really think you deserve recognition for all that you are doing in our community. So even if you are on the outskirts, we do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go absolutely.
It's kind of a double-edged sword that bad things have happened, but it's created a lot of positive things. The OVAB, me getting involved with that, me getting back into the parks because I hadn't gotten outdoors, appreciating it and knowing other people didn't want to go alone. So I created the park pack with Tuesday on Fed, that's what it is. I do weekly walks, throughout the parks and John Top, it's one of my favorites. So,
Sunday, I'm gonna get my Saturday morning together, so I can get out there.
Either Saturday or Sunday.
It's a good experience, anyone who wants to participate, but you know what's, when I went to this event, the thing that I found out, they were interacting with so many entities and businesses throughout the community that all made this happen. And that's really a tribute to them working together. And you know, that's the only way we're gonna make things better, is working together. So anyway, so I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you being here and listening to us ramble and talk, and hopefully education, give you a little bit of perspective where things are at. So anyway, thank you very much. Now, we're gonna adjourn and go into executive session, but anyway, thank you.
City Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6600 for the purpose of discussing real property transactions. If the council intends to come out of executive session to take final action, the presiding officer should announce when the open session will begin again. Representatives of the news media and city staff will be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decisions may be made in executive session.